We also have the CSO, the Central Statistical Organization, giving us advanced estimates of GDP. But what we realized yesterday or heard from CSO sources is that it will come with a disclaimer saying that this is merely an arithmetic extrapolation and they are not going to forecast numbers, given the impact of demonetization. We have with us Prasanna, the Chief Economist at ICICI Securities Primary Dealership Unit, joining in. Prasanna, therefore, the GDP number is a non-number? You won't even look for it?
I mean, that's a bit of a stretch, but yes, so if what CSO had said is true, it means that perhaps the extrapolation will probably be based on data from the first 7 months, or maybe 7.5 months of the fiscal year, which would mean that the impact of whatever happened post-November 8 may not be captured. So in that sense, yeah, it'll basically be extrapolation of first half growth, and therefore may not contain too much of information for us.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Prasanna, morning. Now everyone started to talk about what the budget may throw up this time around. I mean, Finance Minister Arun Jaitley has said in the past that the tax collections will exceed the budget estimates. But what is your own expectation from the budget this time around?
So what we think is that we think it's highly unlikely the government will stick to the fiscal consolidation roadmap. So I think as per the roadmap, 3% was supposed to be the target for next financial year. We think that they will look at exceeding that target. Even with higher tax collections, I think the government would be inclined to spend more, given that some slowdown has occurred in the second half of this financial year, and the momentum in the economy has slowed down. And therefore, the government would think that it might be appropriate to actually step up spending a bit more compared to past years. So we think maybe the government would target a deficit higher than 3%, but probably lower than 3.5%, which is the target for this year.
Okay. Prasanna, morning. Do you think the budget itself could be uneventful because you'll have the model code of conduct in place as well, so there might not be too many announcements. There's this, of course, GST, which is still hanging. So could we have an uneventful budget as well?
I'm not sure whether because of model code of conduct will affect the budget. In a sense, I think the tax and spending proposals have to be made and the parliament has to pass them. So I don't think that the model code of conduct really can have such a big bearing. The GST point is well taken. So if there is no consensus till then, and therefore they have not finalized any of the tax rates or how they're going to map to the different items, then perhaps the budget will not have much to say, because ultimately if GST is going to be implemented during the financial year, then there is no point changing any of the excise or customs or excise or service tax configurations till then. So that part of the budget maybe it could just be the current law will continue, and therefore that part might be a non-event.
Okay, now to come back to where we began for the GDP numbers, you're talking about exceeding the fiscal deficit target 3%. But 3% of what, Prasanna? When that number has no sanctity, how will they write the economic survey? How will they, if you can't project with any certainty, if the current GDP comes with a disclaimer, how will you go to the next GDP number? Is all this going to, scare away investors? For the market, this lack of clarity will be a negative?
No. So I think we shouldn't exaggerate whatever the difference in terms of what the CSO is going to put out and what the actual data might come. So just to take an example, if the CSO is going to say the full year estimate according to their numbers is 7.3%, and finally we end up with some 6.9 or 6.8%. I think it's a material difference, but it's not such a big difference that will throw all calculations out of whack. So in that sense, and then of course what matters is nominal numbers and not real numbers. So yes, so there is going to be some discrepancy based on the numbers CSO puts out, and obviously government has no choice but to frame its budget on those numbers. But I don't think the discrepancy will be so large that the calculations will go completely out of sync.
Okay. All right, Prasanna, we'll leave it at that and perhaps touch base with you after we get the numbers itself. Also, January 13. Thank you for joining us, Prasanna. January 13.